Dear students, in this lecture module, we'll continue with our ongoing chapter, Chapter 3, Plant Kingdom. In this module, we'll basically talk about plant life cycles and alternation of generations. In plants, both haploid and diploid cells can divide by mitosis. This leads to the formation of two types of plant bodies, that is, haploid called gametophyte. It produces gametes by mitosis, and diploid developed from zygote called sporophyte. It produces haploid spores by meiosis. The haploid spores in turn form haploid plant body, that is the gametophyte once again. So the patterns of a plant life cycle are haplantic, diplantic and haplodiplantic. This is the sporophytic plant body which is diploid in nature, which gives rise to the male and the female gametophyte. The male and the female. Now the male and the female, that is either the micro or the megasporangium, which bear the mega or the microspore mother cell, they are diploid. They undergo meiosis to produce haploid microspores or megaspores, which then undergo fertilization so as to produce the zygote which develops into the embryo. Talking about the heplantic life cycle, it is basically exhibited by the thallophytes, that is the algae, wherein we can see that the dominant phase is the haploid phase, which is basically the free living photosynthetic gametophyte. So here the gametophyte, that is the thalloid body, it is photosynthetic. In nature it bears the antheridia and the archegonia, which produces the antherozoids and the egg, which fuse to produce zygote, which develops into embryo. So the dominant phase is the gametophyte and the sporophytic phase or the sporophyte is dependent on the gametophyte. Now the gametes which are produced, they are haploid in nature. They fuse to form zygote embryo, which develops into the sporophyte, and the sporophyte is diploid in nature. Sporophyte produces these spores by meiosis, which again give rise to the gametophyte. This kind of a life cycle where the gametophyte is the dominant phase, that means the haploidy is the dominant characteristic, is referred to as the heplantic life cycle. It is observed in many algae such as volvox, pyrogyra, chlamydomonas, etc. Talking about the diplantic life cycle, the dominant phase is the diploid phase, which is the sporophytic phase, which is independent and photosynthetic in nature. The one which can be seen in blue, the portion indicated by blue coloration, that's the sporophytic phase. The gametophyte is shown with a pink coloration, and it is, as we can see in the pictorial representation, that it is very much reduced, because here the plants, they have shifted to the terrestrial habitat. The gametophyte gets reduced drastically. Here the diplomatic life cycle includes the seed-bearing plants like gymnosperms and angiosperms. But also some algae like fucus, they exhibit the diplomatic life cycle. Talking about the haplodiplomatic life cycle, both the sporophyte and the gametophyte, they are multicellular and they are free-living. The dominant phase may be either gametophyte or the sporophyte, We can see that in the life cycle, the blue and the pink coloration, they are almost similar. So the sporophytic plant body that is diploid, though it is the dominant characteristic in case of pteridophytes, but during the course of evolution, the the plant habitat has shifted from being aquatic to terrestrial, and that led to the gametophyte being reduced and the sporophyte becoming the dominant. This type of life cycle pattern, that is haplodiploidic, is exhibited by the bryophytes, pteridophytes, and some algae, that is brown algae like ectocarpus or kelps, and red algae like polysiphonia. In bryophytes, the dominant phase is the thelloid, that is the haploid gametophytic phase, and the multicellular short-lived sporophyte, which is basically dependent on the gametophyte. In pteridophytes, the dominant phase is the photosynthetic sporophytic vascular plant body. It alternates with multicellular autotrophic independent but short-lived haploid gametophyte. In this module, we carried out a detailed discussion on the life cycle patterns. Hopefully, you must have garnered all the concepts thoroughly. Thank you.